Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. If you can, go ahead and type chat yes in the chat room. Also, we have a quick poll question for you guys. If you want to receive text messages from us, let us know. It's a yes or no. And these text messages would be like alerts about webinars. So for example, today, if you want to alert about the registered webinars that you signed up for, any promotions that we may be running that you want to be the first to know and you don't miss out on any. It's a yes or no. Louder? Me louder. Okay. Is this better? Okay. We're gonna leave that poll question for a few more seconds, and then we're gonna have Sam remove it from the Adobe room. Let's give you guys. I'm not able to, unfortunately, I'm not able to see the webinar room right now, so I'm gonna need your help to let me know. Oh, I can minimize. Oops, I didn't minimize it. Oh, there. Okay. Okay. Please put your answer in the poll box and not in the chat room. That way we can have the poll here. All right, I'm gonna leave it up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm gonna move it. Oh, I'm not able to move it out. Sam, can you help me? Okay, perfect. And then we're gonna switch. Okay. Okay. All right. Good morning, everyone. Yeah. So today's the first day that I'm back in the seminar office. Last time I was hosting from my home, so it's great to be kind of going back to something normal. All right. We ready to begin? Perfect. All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our eLotus webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Donna Chow, and I will be your host and your moderator for today's event. Today's webinar is being presented by Lotus Institute of Integrative Medicine, and we are more popularly known as eLotus. Sam, really quick, it's not working. Okay, got it. Sorry about that, guys. Thank you for your patience. All right, so as I was saying, that today's webinar is being presented by Lotus Institute of Integrative Medicine. We are more popularly known as eLotus, and we've been holding these educational seminars and webinars for over 2 decades. And we are proud to be your trusted source for premium CEU content. Here in Los Angeles County, stay-at-home orders have been extended indefinitely. So right now we're just waiting on, what's going on. How are things with you guys right now? Let me know in the chat room as well as where you are locally. The regulations do vary from county to county. So as I mentioned that here in LA, we are still under our stay-at-home orders. The county next to us, they're opening up slowly. So things vary just literally down the street. Awesome. I see someone else, another LA County, and another Angelino here. Awesome. Good. It's really good to see. Oh, San Jose, Glendale. So we're all pretty, so far, all pretty local in California. It's great to have you guys here. All right. And then we are adjusting to our new reality and working with our incredible speakers to present their classes remotely from home. As you can see, Michelle is from in her home. Unfortunately, we wish you were here, here in California. And so our top priority during this COVID-19 pandemic is keeping our speaker attendees and staff as safe as possible. And to that end, Michelle will be at home in Wisconsin. So she is 2 hours. There's a 2-hour time difference, so she's in the future technically, according to me. And on behalf of eLotus, I want to thank you guys so much for being here today and choosing eLotus as your CE provider. Michelle is one of our top most loved speakers, so you are in for a treat today if this is your first class with her. And if it is your first class with her, please type first into the chat room. That way she knows who her new friends are. Oh, yay. Good. There's a lot of new people joining us today. Welcome. Today's class is treating autoimmune digestive disorders with body feedback acupuncture, essential oils, and Herbs with Michelle Meramour, and this webinar is being recorded. Before we begin, I would like to cover a few housekeeping topics. We are scheduled to end at 6 p.m. today. Lunch is 1 to 2 p.m. and we'll have 2 breaks in the morning as well as 2 in the afternoon. And Michelle will let you know when they are. They're usually about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, let me give you an overview of what you're seeing. To the right of the video feed, you'll find the PowerPoint for today's class. There are lecture notes available for download, and these lecture notes includes the slide handout as well as extra information. So we have the case studies in there. There's a chart that's going to be the first thing that you see before the lecture notes, and then acupuncture protocols for the body feedback acupuncture protocol that Michelle will be talking about. So everything that she will be referring to, it's in that one download. I made it that way so that if you print it out or if you're looking at it, everything's all there. You don't have to go and look for it. And then on the bottom, you'll find 2 boxes. The first box to your left is the chat room. And here in the chat room is where you can connect with your colleagues who are also attending today's webinar live. If you'd like to private chat, please do so by clicking on the menu icon on the top right-hand corner of the chat room box. Then you can start a private chat with whomever you like. If you have any technical issues and you would like to talk to me or the tech, our tech Sam, please send your chat to the host and then we can begin a private chat with you. And then to the right of this chat room, you'll find upcoming events here at eLotus, as well as important information about today's class, such as when you have to do the quiz. The answer is you have 1 month to do it. And you also get the video recording, which you also for a month as well. And so if you experience any technical issues such as slowing, skipping, or stopping, it's most likely it's usually due to your own internet connection. So we recommend that you connect to the internet directly with an Ethernet cord. And if that doesn't work, or if you don't have an Ethernet cord, please try sitting closer to your router as much as possible. That may or may not solve the issue, but it's the best solution. Other than that, if you really can't figure it out, let us know. We're here to help you. And just a quick reminder, to receive credit for today's class, you do need to be logged in with us the entire time. And you'll also get the access to the video replay for 4 weeks, as I mentioned. And this class is packed with a lot of great information, so to fully absorb everything that you're learning, it's always a great idea to rewatch the important parts. And also, if you're logged in more than twice, you'll hear an echoing sound. I do see some people logged in more than one time. Go ahead and close those extra logins. Otherwise, the echoing will keep going. Or after a period of time, Adobe will help remove them for you. Remove the extra login for you. And for our Gold Pass members attending today, you do have unlimited access to all of our English online courses with over 3,000 CE hours, which includes live webinars like today's class. And I'd also like to take this time to thank our sponsor, Evergreen Herbs, as well as their customers. When you choose Evergreen as your herb provider, you're also choosing to invest in the advancement of TCM. So at this time, I'd like to thank you for your support. Yes, the quiz is required for CEU credit, as Michelle said. Thank you. All right, so let's get started with today's class on treating autoimmune digestive disorders with body feedback, acupuncture, essential oils, and herbs with Michelle Meramour. Michelle developed the body feedback style of acupuncture that uses palpation techniques combined with classical acupuncture point prescriptions, essential oils, Chinese herbs, and nutritional supplements to get to the root of people's health concerns. She is recognized as an innovator in the field of acupuncture for integrating functional medicine into her practice. She integrates functional medicine to get to the root of the problems in difficult cases and offer several treatment options to allow people to choose the treatments they are most comfortable with. All right, so let's go ahead and give a warm welcome to Michelle. Michelle, let's do a quick testing on your end so we make sure we hear you.
There we go. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me? Okay, great. And I did purchase a new computer with an Ethernet cord, so hopefully this weekend will go really smooth for the internet connection, and I'm excited to be here with you remote. However, I do love California and LA, so I miss my annual trip, but hopefully next year I'll be back. Great. Since we have a lot of new people on today's webinar, I'll just give a little background about my style of acupuncture. I personally was a an accountant prior to becoming an acupuncturist. And as an accountant, we learned techniques to check our work. And when I went to acupuncture school, I found that the palpation-based systems was a way that I could check my work with acupuncture. So I studied under Kiko Matsumoto, a couple other Japanese practitioners, and really worked on the pulse. Then I found that when I got into practice, I needed something that was more systematic, that my brain kind of wanted like routine and systems and reasons why certain points were working well with the palpation methods. So I realized that the Korean 4-point and Chinese 6-point could be reordered in such a way that the points could create balancing prescriptions and or tonification and sedation prescriptions, and that I could use those balancing prescriptions with my palpation techniques to have the body tell me what is the root of the problem or what needs to be fixed immediately or acutely. And then also using that system, I was able to work through people's health journey with a deeper understanding of what was going on in their body, because their body was always directing the treatment. And then I started to kind of put that together with functional medicine. We live in a Western culture. We have, or a lot of us do, we have allopathic tests available to us, and our clients or patients come in bringing us those test results, expecting us to at least look at them and understand them and incorporate them into their holistic treatments. So I studied quite a bit with Apex Energetics and a couple other of the functional medicine groups. And I also did a doctoral level program with Bob Flaws, and he taught me how to kind of think in TCM terms. That was one of the most important things I learned from him, was how to recategorize just about anything into TCM terms and incorporate into the treatment process. So that's kind of where my style comes from. It's very eclectic and very effective and efficient. So you guys will see with the case studies today that I have a new format for presenting them that's coming out in my textbook. And so I will be going through that format in this class. Tomorrow's class, I'm not. Tomorrow's class, I'm just using summaries on the slides. But today, you'll see why I wanted to go into a little deeper of the information. So let's get going. Okay, so allopathic causes of autoimmune diseases. I was really excited to see this study when I was preparing for this class. There was a recent study in just February that states a breakthrough in cellular genomics technology has allowed researchers to reveal genetic mutations in the CARD11 gene causing rogue behavior in the cells that cause autoimmune diseases. This is the first time allopathic medicine can determine what is triggering autoimmune conditions. They can identify rogue cells and their corresponding gene mutations is the future of research. So I do also do some genetic work where I look at genes that are affecting systems of the body and how to use nutrition and supplements to help support that. So I'm really excited to see this. And I feel like this is finally taking Western allopathic approach to autoimmune diseases to the next step. So I think we'll be seeing a lot of changes coming in the years with how Western medicine is treating these, maybe with gene therapy and different things like that. I think it'd be exciting. So first I thought, well, let's see what this actually means. So the CARD11 gene, the CARD gene interacts with a protein regulator of cell apoptosis and necrosis factor kappa B activation. It also activates the TORC-C, which is an mTOR gene signaling pathway. So I'll just give you a quick background on this. Cell apoptosis is how cells naturally disappear, basically, and the body kind of breaks them down, reuses them, recirculates the materials. And so it's kind of the end stages. So our cells are constantly turning over, our blood is constantly turning over, our organs are even turning over. They say that you can regenerate a whole new liver in 7 years, I think it is, and it's because of this turnover in cells. So the CARD gene interacts with the turnover in cells. So the cellular apoptosis is important for the ending of a life cycle of a cell. And then the mTOR genes are what makes new cells and kind of what drives the newer production of cells. And those two steps are in an inverse relationship with each other in the body. So the body is let's say if this is over here, let me get my screen here. If this is mTOR and this is making new cells, this is cellular apoptosis, or autophagy is what they call it, autophagy, and they should be in relatively imbalance. And what happens with people with autoimmune diseases or different diseases is that mTOR goes too high, and then the autophagy gets reduced, and this causes a problem because the end result, if cells can't die through the normal process, they end up turning into inflammation. So it's all about balance in the body. It's like yin and yang have to be in balance together. The mTOR and the autophagy have to be in balance together. So cellular apoptosis, it's the elimination of unnecessary or damaged cells for the maintenance of homeostasis in tissues, organs, and whole organisms. Apoptosis, a type of cell death mechanism, is controlled by the interactions between several molecules and responsible for the elimination of unwanted cells from the body. So this is really important. If you look at it from a Chinese medical perspective, you can't tonify if there's stagnation, blood stasis, and excess phlegm and dampness. It's really important in Chinese medicine that the stagnation and the stasis, phlegm and dampness, those things are released first, and then you can kind of tonify on top of that from a medical perspective. So when we think about that, think about this mechanism here of apoptosis on a cellular level. Apoptosis can be triggered through intrinsically or extrinsically through death signals from the outside of the cell. So that means that apoptosis can be initiated either from inside the cell or outside of the cell. Any abnormality in apoptosis process can cause various types of diseases, from cancer to autoimmune diseases. So that's why this is so important, is because it's the proper apoptosis that helps people's immune system work properly. When apoptosis isn't working right, you end up with a lot of inflammation, and that's what's a driver in the autoimmune diseases. And then a lot of new research is looking at cancer as possibly an autoimmune disease also. And so you can apply the same kind of approach in theory and in the supplements for the practical use that we'll go through later for people who are post-cancer recovery to support them for hopefully staying in remission and the cancer not coming back. Okay, so the allopathic causes of immune disease. Here's a picture that kind of shows the apoptosis pathway. And if that's not working right, then the cells end up dying off through necrosis. Or if there's injury or an infection or anything that is out of the norm for the immune system, it'll go through the necrosis pathway too. So apoptosis, you can see in the picture, it's kind of makes the cell a little bit smaller, starts to kind of break it down, and then the cell breaks apart into several apoptotic bodies, which are then phagocytized, no inflammation. So it's basically breaking down the cell, making it smaller, making it into parts that it can actually recirculate. Then if we go to necrosis, the opposite happens. The cell swells up, the plasma membrane ruptures, and then cellular and nuclear lysis causes inflammation. So this is the the big trigger in autoimmune conditions is that too many cells are going through this necrosis pathway. So cells utilize autophagy to recycle damaged or unwanted organelles and macromolecules, and in doing so, generate energy and recover precursor building blocks necessary for normal growth. So the body's actually able to recycle parts of the cell, and that will help to reduce the burden on what has to be eliminated. Then mTOR and autophagy are closely related, integrated within cells, where defects in the signaling through both pathways are known to drive the onset of a range of human diseases. So this is really important. We're going to kind of use this approach throughout the class today, is harmonizing the mTOR and the autophagy. So what is mTOR? mTOR is the mammalian target of rapamycin. The mTOR functions as a protein kinase that regulates cell growth, cell proliferation, cell motility, cell survival, protein synthesis, autophagy, and transcription. So it does, because if mTOR is active, then autophagy is reduced. If mTOR is reduced, then autophagy is increased. So that's that relationship again. What's really interesting too about the mTOR is the coronavirus uses this mTOR pathway to replicate. Well, all viruses do actually. So what they do is the viruses will trigger an upregulation of mTOR, and that's part of how they spread in the body, and that's how they start infecting a lot of cells. So from the whole coronavirus or COVID approach, this information you can use today is really important for helping people with autoimmune conditions and that might be high risk, reducing their risk and keeping this mTOR kind of depressed a little bit so that if they are exposed to it, that it has a much slower and less of a chance of replicating. So again, you'll want to remember that this same approach is what I'm using and working with my clients to prevent and deal with any kind of COVID exposure. So mTOR also functions as a tyrosine protein kinase that promotes the activation of insulin receptors and insulin growth-like factor 1 receptors. So we are going to learn how we do that. That's what we're going to spend the day doing. Oh, how many of you guys watched the 1-hour webinar that I did on Wednesday too? Let me know if you watched it or if you didn't watch it, so I'll just kind of know. Okay, so a few did not already. Okay, so I'll make sure that I kind of highlight some of the information that applies from the Wednesday's webinar to today. Oh, a lot of people. Okay. You guys might want to go and watch that, the ones that have not. It, I think, is a really interesting approach to looking at basically how the coronavirus is different than the regular flu virus, what's going on in the body from a TCM perspective, and how to regulate that to get the body to respond more efficiently to the coronavirus. So, okay, mTOR has an inverse relationship with autophagy that balance each other. So you guys have heard me say that a lot of times. Upregulation of mTOR signaling can promote tumor growth and progression through diverse mechanisms, including the promotion of growth factor receptor signaling, angiogenesis, glycolytic metabolism, lipid metabolism, cancer cell migration, and suppression of autophagy. So you can see you don't really want your mTOR upregulated. It's going to make you more susceptible to getting sick, tumor growth. One of the issues, though, that we're going to talk about later is that a lot of people who are bodybuilders that use a lot of amino acids or testosterone boosting supplements are upregulating their mTOR to build muscle and bulk up. So unfortunately, I have one bodybuilder that came down with, he's fairly certain COVID, and happens to get sick a lot. And I think it's because his mTOR is constantly upregulated from being a bodybuilder. So if you have people who exercise a lot, they're naturally going to have a slightly higher mTOR in response to exercising. So what you're going to learn here, you can apply to them even if they don't have an autoimmune condition to help to balance that. Causes of autoimmune diseases, the allopathic. Okay, so the common mTOR upregulators, the amino acid leucine increases muscle mass and aids in the healing of skin and bones. So this amino acid leucine is really popular in the protein shakes and drinks. And again, that's what I was talking about with the bodybuilders. Leptin hormone regulates body weight by influencing hunger and energy expenditure. So this leptin hormone is going to show up later with one of our case studies. I'm just curious, how many people here have talked to, have heard about diabetes type 1.5? It's a little different than diabetes type 2, and it's not quite diabetes type 1. It's right in between. And that seems to be more of an adult onset type 1. They often start off as type 2 and go into type 1. So I'm just curious. So, trickety cheap. Yep, I got a case study on a type 1.5 in here. Yeah, it's interesting new concept I heard a couple years ago. And the leptin hormone was actually a major factor in her being able to reduce that autoimmune portion of the diabetes, and I think it's because of it was upregulating the mTOR. So she had to take the leptin out of her diet. Yeah. Hyperthyroidism is an mTOR upregulator. Folate is an mTOR upregulator. So this is really important. Some people are taking too much methylfolate, and they're upregulating their mTOR too much. Everybody in the gene world has kind of gone a little overboard with the MTHFR gene mutations, and also recommending, I think, too high of levels of folate. So that will upregulate the mTOR, and so will testosterone. So people who naturally exercise a lot will have higher testosterone levels and, again, this higher mTOR. So also, too, what I'll do when we have our breaks, rest periods, and lunch is I'm going to go through the chat box. So if you have a question and I happen to catch it, I will try and answer it now. Otherwise, we'll engage in a conversation about that when we return from our little rest periods, so I have a chance to go through them. Oh, how much is too much folate? Honestly, I think about 800 to 1,000 milligrams per day is plenty. And some of the higher methylated supplements have like 2,000. I think some people, when I first got into this work, people didn't really understand the folate, methylfolate, and folic acid issues, and they were actually recommending folic acid at levels of 5,000 units a day, which is so toxic for the body to begin with. That was kind of scary. So there are some higher conditions that respond good to higher folate, but in general, I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, so common mTOR inhibitors. We're going to talk about supplements that inhibit mTOR later in the day throughout the case studies, and then at the end of the day, we're going to go into detail on those. In general, though, calorie restriction and intermittent fasting inhibits mTOR. So how many people here have done the intermittent fasting or have had results? I personally have done it, and it's helped me to release, I think, 30 plus pounds. If you guys were able to see me, I'm quite a bit lighter than I was a couple years ago, and it's mostly the intermittent fasting, and it's actually really helped my digestive system. And it's really good for giving the digestive system and the immune system a chance to relax and calm down, and then it can go in and just do cellular maintenance, and that's where it increases the autophagy. So it's really important, especially there's certain gene tests you can do, and you can see the genes that are involved in the autophagy, and if there's any gene mutations that are causing problems with that. And usually if people have autoimmune conditions, they do have those gene mutations. And also high levels of inflammation will respond really well to this intermittent fasting, which I used with one of the case studies today. Okay, great. So I hear people are getting pretty good results. Yeah, it's so different than what we were taught, going to school So I graduated acupuncture school in 2002, so almost 20 years ago. And, it was they had a whole nutrition program. It was about, eating, 5 small meals a day or 3 small meals and 2 snacks and making sure your stomach is fed all the time. And that's good for some people, but I think 80% of the population can't handle that. That's great for a hypoglycemic person who needs that stable blood sugar. And there's also tricks that you can do for people with hypoglycemia to be able to do the intermittent fasting, which is kind of what I have. So I'll share that with you later if we have time. Protein restriction, and ketogenic diet. A lot of people are confused on the ketogenic diet, and they think it just means a lot of like protein and fat and meat and bacon, but it really doesn't. You can do, and I've done this myself, ketogenic diet that's more plant-based with healthy fats. So avocado, the different healthy omega-3 oils, fish oil, avocado oil, olive oil, coconut oil, walnut oil. Those are all omega-3 oils. Salads. And with the ketogenic diet, it's really a small amount of protein. And most people that think they're doing ketogenic are just doing mostly reduced carbohydrates and no sugar, which is different than the ketogenic because you can't really have a lot of protein with ketogenic. So that's it. Okay, please share hypoglycemic. Okay, I will do that at the end of the day when we go through the supplements. Let me put a little note. Hypoglycemia, because it'll make more sense then. Okay, and then also exercise inhibits mTOR in the liver and in the fat cells, but activates it in the brain, muscle, and heart. So that is part of what makes exercising so good for you, is that it'll downregulate it in the liver and the fat cells, which is where most of the problems come from, upregulated mTOR. But it'll promote new neurogenesis and new cells generating in the brain, muscles, and heart. So determine intermittent fasting. Good question. So basically, it's giving your body a minimum of 12, preferably 14 hours between meals. I think you could go maybe as high as 16, but that's really pushing it. So one of the case studies today, I had her go on intermittent fasting, and she did really well. So you'll see kind of that protocol. She was a hypoglycemic person too. So that's where I have the supplements in there. So you guys will get to see how that's done. So, I mean, myself, I try and have my dinner finished by 6 o'clock. And then in the morning, I have just green tea, and then I'll have a collagen in ketone powder supplement together to stabilize my blood sugar, usually around 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 to 8, depending on what time I got up. And then that'll hold me over till I'll eat around 11. So I usually try and go from 6 p.m. to 11 a.m. without food. But the collagen and ketone powder is it doesn't seem to break the fast at all, and it actually helps with stabilizing blood sugar and all the benefits of the collagen. Please tell us what mTOR is again in relationship to what we're talking about. Okay, so mTOR with autoimmune conditions, it triggers too much cell growth, and it's related to autoimmune conditions because it downregulates the autophagy. So by downregulating the autophagy, if mTOR is upregulated, it causes a whole bunch of inflammation and is related to autoimmune conditions. So what we want to do is we want to pull that mTOR down to boost up the autophagy, and then that reduces the inflammation. That's the easiest way to actually really get the inflammation down in people's bodies. Way more effective than taking a whole bunch of supplements, I found, is changing their diet. So if I have anybody who has an autoimmune condition or excess inflammation, I will work with them with their diet using either the intermittent fasting, protein reduction, and or a ketogenic type diet. So there we go. How's that? So this is going to be really helpful in dealing with the autoimmune cases. So another thing in this study, it talked about this NF-kappa light chain enhancer of activated B cells. So they call it NF-kappa B. So NF-kappa B is a protein that controls the transcription of DNA, cytokine production, and cell survival. So cytokine production, those are either inflammatory cellular messengers or anti-inflammatory cellular messengers. And with COVID, there's a cytokine storm or cytokine syndrome. That's the overexpression of inflammatory cytokines. This is the same activity that happens for people with autoimmune flare-ups. The same exact type of pathogenesis. So the 1-hour class that I did on Wednesday for dealing with COVID is actually the same approach that I take with people going through an autoimmune flare-up. Okay? Also, now we've got the transcription of DNA going on. So what they found is that with these autoimmune diseases, in that first slide, that recent study, is that the DNA is getting altered in the cells, which is then triggering the autoimmune conditions. So this is part of what is going awry that's causing the DNA to get mutated and then turning into the autoimmune conditions. So NF-kappa B is involved in cellular responses to stimuli such as stress, cytokines, free radicals, heavy metals, ultraviolet irrigation, oxidized LDL, so those are bad fats, and bacterial or viral antigens. So this is where the mechanism for the cytokine storm from COVID is coming from, part of it, a good part of it. But you can see some of the big factors involved in autoimmune diseases and triggering their flare-ups are stress, too much inflammation, too many free radicals, exposure to heavy metals, oxidized fats, bad fats in the diet, and bacterial or viral infections. So I'm done for. So anyway, you can see how important it is to kind of look at this. So we can down-regulate this NF-kappa B again by upregulating the autophagy. So again, that's where the diet changes come into play. NF-kappa B plays a role in regulating the immune response to infection. Incorrect regulation of NF-kappa B has been linked to cancer, inflammatory and autoimmune diseases, septic shock, viral infection, and improper immune development. NF-kappa B regulates genes responsible for both the innate and adaptive immune responses. So I went into the innate and adaptive immune responses in detail on Wednesday. I'm just going to summarize it for you guys here. The innate immune response is your kind of first line of defense that comes out to attack the virus, the COVID virus in this case. And in the regular flu, the innate immune system only has to be active for about 2 or 3 days. And then the adaptive immune system comes in and does cleanup, put some antibodies out there, make sure everything is looking good. And then cellular regeneration starts in the area that was infected. So with COVID, if it's a lung infection, what happens is COVID gets in there and it has a very slow process of attaching to the body. It's kind of figured out that if it slows itself down, then the innate immune system is only really active for about 2 or 3 days at the initial onset of the infection. And then with COVID, it is still in this early stage for up to 6 days, is what they said. And so the adaptive immune system is coming in and cleaning everything up and promoting tissue regeneration too soon with COVID. So it promotes the tissue regeneration too soon, and then the COVID has a lot more to attach to. And then the innate systems are sometimes will come in for another wave to try and get rid of it again. And then in some of the really bad cases, it then just progresses into the cytokine storm. So it's really important to have the innate and adaptive immune responses synchronized. And with COVID, they're not synchronized because the virus has figured out how to outsmart that synchronization in the body. So there's things that you can do from a TCM perspective to help with that synchronization and with a couple of key supplements. And we'll talk about them today also. I give you all the science behind this one supplement called Transfer Factor on Wednesday's webinar. NF-kappa B controls many genes involved in the inflammatory process. NF-kappa B is found to be chronically active in many inflammatory diseases such as inflammatory bowel disease, arthritis, sepsis, gastritis, asthma, and atherosclerosis. Got that one out. So I know a lot of our patients have asthma, especially in LA, because of the smog and different things. So that's chronic lung inflammation. And that's where, again, if we can downregulate this mTOR, that'll pull down this NF-kappa B, keep the inflammation down. So here's a picture of the triggers for autoimmune diseases. And this is what I talk about with my clients all the time. We'll go through them in detail. But all these different things can cause extensive inflammation in the body and trigger autoimmune flare-ups and diseases. And we'll go through them in detail here. So the triggers for autoimmune diseases, they're all external triggers, which I think is very interesting, that these external triggers can cause so much dysfunction internally. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to look at that from a TCM perspective on, like, how does that happen? Why is that happening? So I'm going to give you my take on that coming up here in a few minutes. So the triggers for autoimmune diseases, food allergies. There's various types of testing you can do for food allergies. You can also use my body feedback system to test certain foods. The only problem is if there's a little bit of tolerance built up in the body, sometimes my style of muscle testing, it doesn't show up as a problem until they've eaten it too many times, which is also the same problem they have on some of the tests, the antibody tests. A lot of people with autoimmune conditions, it's really important to deal with this food allergy issue. I'm sure you guys are aware of that. Pathogens and chronic infections are big triggers for autoimmune diseases. I have some people that have autoimmune conditions that as soon as they feel like they're fighting an infection, they'll come in and get a treatment or cupping, something like that immediately so that they don't get an autoimmune flare-up. And that's what I always recommend for my autoimmune patients that are like in maintenance or have completed their treatment and feel satisfied with their results, to let them know as soon as you feel like you're fighting something to make sure you get in for a treatment. Stress is a big trigger for autoimmune diseases. And this is where people need to kind of change their lifestyle. Sometimes the body just won't tolerate things that we in our minds are willing to tolerate. And with people with autoimmune conditions, sometimes they have to change jobs, change careers, change lifestyles, just to keep the stress down. And medications, side effects from medications can cause autoimmune issues. Hormones, this is where you'll see for women a lot of their autoimmune symptoms flare up with different times of their cycle. Most people are thinking about estrogen issues like estrogen dominance, or there's so many synthetic estrogens in our environment that it will trigger an autoimmune flare up more in the beginning, the first half of a menstrual cycle. But there is, however, a progesterone allergy that can happen. I didn't put the study in here, but it's in one of my other classes. And women can have an actual allergy to their progesterone. And I have one client who has that, and a couple of fertility clients that have had that. That's really hard to deal with because that's actually more natural progesterone that the body is turning on. They don't know why. So sometimes you can have those autoimmune symptoms, again, due to hormones. Heavy metals. Hair analysis is good for heavy metals and or blood tests. It's really good to find out what's going on in your water supply in the area you live in, because you probably have a lot of clients that are local to you. One thing that I found out figuring this out is the water supply in my area has high levels of copper sulfate. So that creates high levels of copper in the body. And I personally have a gene mutation that doesn't process copper. So as soon as I went on always drinking like spring water, I got a lot better. But before I realized that, I was making myself quite ill with copper overload, and that will cause zinc deficiency. So zinc is the mineral that balances copper. So I recommend everybody get a hold of their local water utility and get a report on what's going on in your water. I have a lot of people in the area that are in older farming communities, and they have really high levels of nitrates in the water. And a lot of these people have neurological conditions that I believe are related to the high levels of nitrates. So I show them the studies on that. I let them know what's going on and get them to convert over to a high quality spring water. We have a really good artesian spring water source in our area, and that makes a huge difference in their health. And it's tomorrow's case study. She actually had to do that. She had it show up on the genetic testing. There's certain genes that are involved in detoxing, and there's one gene family that deals with detoxing nitrates, and she couldn't do it, and she was living in a farming community. So that's what was going on there. So the local information from your water utility company, it's just a general water report, like what's in the water. You can just ask for the latest analysis of the water. And sometimes they have it right on a website link because they have to provide that information. So, and then I did the gene testing. I really like the gene testing. If you guys are interested in how that plays into the world of acupuncture and TCM, I'd be happy to do a class on that sometime because I've been working with that for probably 5 or 6 years now, and I'm learning a lot. So it was through saliva test. I'll talk about that at the end too. I run the labs that I run are usually the ones that the clients can get themselves. So the DNA testing we'll do for them because that's just looking at gene analysis. It's not diagnosing any diseases. And then also the organic oats test from Great Plains is really helpful. And then I have a naturopath in town who I'll recommend if I feel like a person might have a parasite or something they need a stool test for, or a blood test, or even just a general CBC with differential. Tomorrow's class, we're going to look at one of those too. It's really good to have a naturopath on your side or somebody that you can work with to collaborate with to run your tests if you need them. Oh, good. You guys would like something like that. Sure, I can provide a list. I'll do that over lunch or something. Okay, so now we're going to look at the TCM causes for autoimmune diseases. Now we're going to start to look at this through our paradigm. So the TCM body feedback perspective for autoimmune conditions. This is my perspective that I kind of created, but it's based on the 6-level theory of Shanhan Lun. And I talked about that in detail on Wednesday's class, where the pathogens are able to enter through the Taiyang level, which is how things come in from the exterior. And remember, we just learned that all these autoimmune triggers and causes come from the exterior. So the initial onset or the repeated exposure is going to come through the Taiyang level, which is small intestine, urinary bladder. And a lot of people forget about that in TCM when you're thinking about like just lung and large intestine for the immune system. But actually that, I kind of think of Taiyang as almost like our aura layer. It's more surface and it registers either wind heat or wind cold, both of them. And that's more like where your Wei Qi kind of extends to. So to me, it's almost like our aura. And then after Taiyang, it'll go into Yang Ming, which is stomach and large intestine. And that's where pathogens will get in through the nose, because remember the nose is the large intestine, meridian goes to the nose. And the stomach, if we happen to have a pathogen that we swallow or somehow touch our mouth or nose. And then we know from the coronavirus can come in through the eyes also. So the stomach meridian goes up to the eyes, right? That's the lower lid. So that's where it's coming in through the eyes. Some viruses can also kind of come in through the ears, but I think that's more through the Taiyang, through the small intestine meridian that goes there. So if the pathogen gets into the body through starts through Taiyang and Yangming, then it goes into Shaoyang, which is the stage where we start to get the alternating fever and chills and different things like that. Do I talk about that in detail in here? Oh yeah, I do. Okay. Is there anything else on this one I need to do? Okay, so anyway, we'll go into that in detail in a second. Sorry, I have a tendency to skip ahead in my mind and forget that I wrote it down. So this explains how external influences, the foods, pathogens, medications, synthetic hormones, and heavy metals disrupt health on a cellular level. So that's what I did. I was like, okay, how can all these external influences get in and damage the DNA and create all this havoc in our cells? So the same 6-level theory that can be applied to the body as a whole can be applied to the cells on an individual level too, because it's the whole, microcosm to the macrocosm, or macrocosm to the microcosm here. So 6-level theory. So Taiyang circulates and can spread pathology into the Yangming level. That's how we were talking about the viruses coming in those different ways. So how this works is that this is just the natural progression of qi in the body. There's different flows in the body, like the organ, like the meridian flow. It starts with the lung meridian, goes to large intestine, stomach, spleen, from there the heart, small intestine. That flow is more for organ pathology and meridian circulation, but that's not how qi circulates in the body. I actually have the quote from the Yellow Emperor's Classic where it talks about this 6-level. You can see I'm cutting out the 6-level this 6-level pathology is actually how qi circulates in the body. So what happens is these external influences are considered pathogenic qi. So they follow the same pathway as 6 levels. So if 6 levels is how the body naturally moves, I can see that. If 6 levels is how the body naturally progresses qi through the body for different cellular functions, then pathogens are going to follow that same progression because they're evil qi coming in from the outside of the body. Or any one of those external influences can follow the same qi pathway. Okay, so if the yang ming can circulate and spread pathology to Xiaoyang. So Xiaoyang is triple burner and gallbladder meridians. And triple burner is where the majority of our immune system lies for the lymph system. So the immune system, those first 2 layers, Taiyang and Yangming, is the superficial immune system. And then if pathogens get too deep, they get into the lymph system. Then they get into the lymph system next. When we go on our first break, I'm going to reset my modem because, like I said, I have an Ethernet cable, so I know I'm not on Wi-Fi. So anyway, so if pathology gets into Xiaoyang, it then crosses over from the yang meridians into the yin, and then it goes, then it goes into spleen and stomach. So you can see this is how the pathology is entering through the body. Then it gets into the Tai Yin, and it can circulate and spread pathology into Xiaoyan. So Tai Yin is spleen and lungs. So with the coronavirus, when it gets to this level is where you're having, I think we should go ahead and take our first little period of rest, and I will restart my modem. How does that sound, guys? And then we'll come in and finish this up.